through. It'd be great to see supporters out here. So anybody wants to go to the courtroom, go. And for legal aid folks, we technically have released until 12 to noon. But if you're in the courtroom, I think you should probably budget that in. I'm in the courtroom. I'm not talking about the lawyer.
I mean, like,
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. So if you want to, if you guys want to be here,
No man, no wall, sanctuary for all.
No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all.
No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. Sanctuary for all. No ban, no wall, sanctuary for all. No wall, sanctuary for all.
We'll tell the lawyers.
Yeah, it's very important that you will have a nice
Okay. Okay.
Sí se puede, 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 sí se puede.
I mean, it's a bunch of facts. Yeah. 2009 detention judgment.
maybe this is it.
Hey.
don't think we're gonna have people here now. Like some people are trying to go up, and we had a much bigger crowd earlier that y'all caught. So.
Do you guys have any questions?
So, and when the hearing's over, they'll probably come out the front of the building. They won't be here. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna go in the front.
Yeah. You already caught us. You caught us in our message.
Let's go, bro. Set up.
There.
It's in the front. Are you there already?
Look, man. Yeah. What you call it? So now I'm.
Yo, it's got to be on this side. It's got to be right here. Look, in the center. Yeah, okay. Don't come out and they'll push these back. They usually do it right here.
Oh my God. So wait, how am I going to do this? I have to be bored. Maybe I should stay up here.
Can I move these out a little?
Can I?
Can I move these out a little?
I thought myself, should I go in? Just stay here. She's going to come out and say the same information anyway. You know what I mean? Like,
Going forward, you're just going to learn background. Out here, you're going to get video. You're not going to get any video on the video.
right, but like they're going to go over what happened when they did the press release.
Products that Puerto Rico produces, agriculture products. We're going to send down a team headed by the Agriculture Commissioner that will come during the what's called the Somos weekend, which brings New York legislators down to Puerto Rico. And we want to work with the Puerto Rican agricultural community to see how we can help them get up and running and how we can be more aggressive about buying products from Puerto Rico to help that community and that sector of the economy. Third, we have a joint tourism effort with Puerto Rico, which we started several years before. It predated the hurricane. And we'll be working with the governor's office to see if we can increase that joint tourism promotion, where we work with airlines and tourist agencies to develop the tourism between New York and Puerto Rico. We want people coming to Puerto Rico. We want to stimulate that part of the economy. And many people had heard about the hurricane and they weren't sure about the condition of Puerto Rico. We want them to know that Puerto Rico is not just a great place to live, it's also a great place to visit. And New York is beautiful too. But people from New York might want to vacation out of New York. And if they do, we want them to think about Puerto Rico, and we want to increase those joint efforts. I'd also like to address the federal government's response once more. We spent many months, this has now been 10 months, believe it or not, and we spent many months criticizing the federal government for an inappropriate response. And the federal government said for many months, no, we're doing everything we can do, it's going great, it's going great. The president applauded FEMA, applauded the recovery effort. We now know that was all baloney. We'd actually say something else in New York, but leave it at baloney for now. That was not true. What the President of the United States said was not true. And I'm not saying that as an elected official. This is not a political debate. The federal government put out a report that said the federal response was ineffective, anemic, FEMA was not prepared, they did not have an appropriate response for Puerto Rico. That is the federal government controlled by President Trump. That is the same federal government and the same president who for months said the response to Puerto Rico was laudatory. The federal report was not by the Congress, It was not by the Democrats. It was by the president's agency. And it refuted everything the president said. So the president said for many months, this has been a great response. Federal government comes out with a report. The federal report says it was not a great response. It was a poor response. FEMA wasn't ready. They were shorthanded. They weren't prepared. And the rebuilding effort has not been what it should have been. That is now documented. That is not a political dispute, even in this heated political climate. That is a fact. Now, the President of the United States should respond to that fact. Mr. President, you were wrong. You were wrong for months. Everything you said turned out not to be true. Your own federal government says the response was inadequate. What are you going to do? I suggested, number one, he starts with an apology to the people of Puerto Rico. Why? Because he was wrong. Because what he said was not true. And when you say something that is not true, and you then find out the facts, and you're the President of the United States, it's incumbent on you to say, I was wrong. And I apologize. Because what I said was wrong, and even more, because my federal government did not do the right thing in helping the people of Puerto Rico. That's step one. Step two, the president should say, well, now that I understand the response was not adequate, I'm going to make it right. How do you make it right? Puerto Rico asked for $94 billion in the recovery plan. All they have gotten is a $5 billion loan. That is disgraceful. That is disgraceful. So now, Mr. President, that you know you were not helpful to the people of Puerto Rico, fund the recovery effort that they need to rebuild. That is the least you can do. And third, Mr. President, I'm going to send him a letter. I'm going to invite him to come back to Puerto Rico. Come back to Puerto Rico. The island that he disrespected. The island that his agencies failed to serve. Come back to Puerto Rico. Look for yourself at the damage. Look at the number of homes that still need help. Look at the devastation to the economy of Puerto Rico. Understand what your tax reform bill did to Puerto Rico and how the tax reform bill actually hurt the economy at a time when the island needed it most, decimating the pharmaceutical industry, which was the mainstay of one of the largest sectors of the Puerto Rican economy. Come and look at the damage that was exacerbated by your lack of federal response. I will even come with you, Mr. President. Remember that you came from New York originally, Mr. President, and remember how important the Puerto Rican connection is as a New Yorker. Come back to Puerto Rico. Apologize for the mistake. Say that you will make it right. Provide funding for the reconstruction effort and provide help for the struggling economy. Puerto Rico never needed paper towels, Mr. President. They needed funding assistance to rebuild the economy. People needed roofs on their homes. They needed clean water. They didn't need paper towels. Come back and fix the wrong. Come back and right the wrong. That is now indisputable because your own federal agency said it. Puerto Rico suffered a disaster at the same time that Florida and Texas had a disaster. There is no difference between Texas, Florida, and Puerto Rico. They are all home to American citizens. And they all deserved the full response of their federal government. Puerto Rico did not get it. Florida did, Texas did. Puerto Rico did not get it. Puerto Rico was neglected, abandoned, and disrespected by this administration. And they did not deserve it. My last point is, I've been to Puerto Rico many times. As I mentioned, I was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Clinton, and I did a lot of work in public housing, and I've been to Puerto Rico many times during the Clinton administration. I also did emergency assistance in Puerto Rico during that time. That was the time of Hurricane Georges, and I was here for the reconstruction effort at that time with Governor Rosselló I. There was a Governor Mario Cuomo I too, so I can say that. Every time I come to the island, I am impressed. And on this visit, what really has struck me is in the middle of all the pain and all the neglect and all the disrespect, if there was a people who had a right to be angry, if there was a people who had a right to complain, it is the Puerto Rican people. They have a total right to say, I am so angry, I am so annoyed at what happened to us. That is not the Puerto Rican way. Every place we went, we were met with smiles, optimism, gratitude, thanks. The character and the spirit of the Puerto Rican people is beautiful and resilient and strong and contagious. And it is that optimism and that charitable, positive instinct that makes this island so special. Yes, it's beautiful, and yes, Mother Nature blessed it, but it's the people that are the most special. And that's the greatest asset of Puerto Rico. And every time I come, I leave inspired. With that, I will turn it over to Borough President Ruben Diaz of El Bronx.
Gracias, Gobernador. Buenas tardes a todos. Governor, I just want to put an addendum to some of your suggestions that you've given this president about how he should handle Puerto Rico. I think one of the things that you should add, or we should all add, is that what he should do is study you. You exemplify and embody a true profile and leadership that unfortunately is lacking in this president. And we appreciate everything that you're doing. We also share your sentiments and your frustrations as how this federal government has failed and put out a report of their very own failure. But what you have been able to accomplish here with all of the men and women of labor and unions and the leadership of the healthcare industry. We have George Gresham here, we have Dennis Rivera here, and so many others. It's pretty impressive. What I've seen over the last 2 days is nothing short of miraculous and impressive in that coordination, which is not easy. To have so many individuals come together, band together, sacrifice their summers, volunteer, be away from their families, away from their comfort of their homes, and yet have that enthusiasm and that energy and that coordination that is providing real results. And granted, we wish that it could happen at a macro level. I wish there were other governors in the United States that can share their resources and their efforts so that we can amplify these services. But to have you say that you're going to increase the amount of students, that's fascinating. That's wonderful. Because what we also saw is not only are they getting provided with the best civic-minded lesson or the civic lesson that they can have, It's fulfilling for them, but at the same time, we also know that this is more than just about brick and mortar. Like Doña Nelly said today when we was in Orocovis, she says that she's been full of anxiety, that she's been crying for 10 months. And to see all of these individuals now fixing the roof of her house and the presence there, it has a true positive psychological effect on her and her neighbors, and hopefully to the rest of the people of the island of Puerto Rico. One thing I want folks to understand is that Andrew Cuomo has not been to Puerto Rico just post-Hurricane Maria. We've been here before. We were here because prior to that hurricane and that storm, we all knew that Puerto Rico was and still continues to be in an economic storm. We tried to address that. And you came here. I know that you spoke to Marcos, and Marcos will speak a little bit about this. And you opened up an office headed by your very capable Betty Enrique and your staff. And with that, there have been ongoing conversations. So when you speak of working with the agricultural community here, we've already been doing that with your staff, with the Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation, Marlene Cintron, who's been with us on this mission. She's out on location. I'm happy to report that Fresh Direct, which is an online grocer, is negotiating and purchasing lettuce and different vegetables and fruits already. In the Hunts Point Produce Market, there are fruits that are being purchased by many folks who are growing them here in Puerto Rico. Gerard Cash and Carry has been purchasing fruits. We in negotiations with Jetro in the Hunts Point section of the Bronx. And we even have a reverse commute. We have Bronx hot sauce that is making their way from the Bronx to Puerto Rico. So, shameless plug for the Bronx hot sauce. Brevemente le quiero dar las gracias a nuestro gobernador. Saludos del condado del Bronx. Yo represento el condado con la población más grande de puertorriqueños allá en la ciudad de Nueva York. Le queremos dar las gracias porque lo que hemos visto en los últimos días es algo impresionante, de ver de la coordinación entre las uniones, los estudiantes, la comunidad aquí, la energía, el entusiasmo. Es algo que debemos de seguir hacia adelante con el liderazgo de nuestro gobernador. Sabemos que Puerto Rico siempre va a tener una pareja, siempre va a tener ese compromiso del estado de Nueva York. Ojalá y que otros gobernadores a nivel de los Estados Unidos puedan aprender y puedan encontrar en su corazón y enseñar el mismo liderazgo. Pero como presidente del condado del Bronx, como neoyorquino, como hijo de un vaquero de Bayamón y mami de Ponce, me siento sumamente orgulloso de lo que hemos visto, sumamente orgulloso y honrado de estar aquí en esta misión con nuestro gobernador. Y espero reportarle a aquellas personas en el Bronx y en Nueva York de que sí, ahora tenemos este vehículo de aquellas personas que quieran asistir, que quieren ser voluntarios, puedan venir aquí y ser parte de esta iniciativa. And so with that, Governor, I just want to say, I want to thank your staff. I want to thank your team, many who are not in this room today, because it is not easy what they're doing. And what has been established here is now a long-term vehicle so that New Yorkers who want to volunteer, New Yorkers who want to do something to help out, whether they're Puerto Rican or not, now there's that vehicle in place here, and I can't wait to go back and to report to them how to take those steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want you to know I'm going to make my personal effort to improve the economy of Puerto Rico. I saw a 1957 Chevy along the way. It is a beauty. It is under restoration. The owner is not ready to sell, but I think if I get him alone without the cameras, I can talk to him about it. The car needs a little work. 1957 Chevy is a special car, special year. A lot of good things happened in 1957. I was born in 1957. Car needs a little work on the top, so do I. A little work on the top. But it's a special one. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to give Dennis Rivera a special assignment to go back and try to coerce the owner into selling that 1957 Chevy. I haven't given up. It's a beauty. With that, our great public advocate from New York City, she's been a great champion for Puerto Rico and for people who are down and out all her public service career. Tish James.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. So good morning, everyone. As we flew into Puerto Rico, what we all noticed was the blue tarps on the roofs. They dotted the landscape of Puerto Rico. And for me, that underscores the fact that Puerto Rico is still in need, in great need. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be here and to share these last few days with the Cuomo team and all of those who have given up their time. It's also an honor and a privilege to be a proud graduate of CUNY because the students from CUNY and SUNY who have given up their time, those who have thought about others before they have thought about their convenience, they are truly champions. And it really is the greatest teaching moment that they could ever achieve in a classroom, and that is really important. And what I also noticed is as we visited the municipalities and towns, the humility, the graciousness of all of the residents who welcomed us into their homes. And despite all the challenges that they face, they did it with a smile, they did it with a sense of decency and a sense of gratitude. And for that, that will forever remain in my heart. I think it's really critically important that we talk about policy. And there were two policy recommendations that, for me, came out of this trip. And that is, one, the deeds and the title to the property, which a lot of residents in Puerto Rico cannot find. At no point in time did they ever have access to deeds and to titles. In order to get FEMA resources, individuals need deeds and titles. And so I am urging FEMA to relax the regulations so that individuals can get financial assistance from FEMA. Two, resources need to go to municipalities. And it's really critically important that we get resources to individuals who need it most. It's my understanding that most individuals who are seeking to fix their homes cannot get the resources from FEMA. We need to get money on the ground, and we need to do it as quick as possible. And as the governor mentioned, FEMA obviously is for me, it doesn't represent federal, it represents a failing agency. So, I think we should take heed from the leadership from Governor Cuomo. He has been on the ground. He has visited Puerto Rico at least 5 times, and he has truly been a champion, and we really can take some advice and counsel from the great state of New York and from all of those New Yorkers who gave up their time and gave resources to Puerto Rico. I'm not Puerto Rico, but today I am Puerto Rican because the spirit of Puerto Rico is in my heart and in my soul. And as they say, we will never forget. We will never forget what we witnessed here. We will never forget that this island still is in need of assistance and that they too are citizens. It's really critically important that we understand that. And that they not be treated differently and that they not be treated like second-class citizens. And I want to thank Governor Cuomo because although Puerto Rico's been out of the headlines, he continues to shine a spotlight on the needs of the